everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm here today with Walt Boyes, an editor at Ring of Fire Press, and he's going to be sharing some of his insights as an editor. So welcome, Walt.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. So can you tell us in general first, what is basically your job as an editor?
Well, I actually do three different things for Ring of Fire Press. The first is I select what we buy. People send me submissions. We don't have an open door policy, but if I know somebody and I know they're good, then I'm more than happy to take a look at what they have. Primarily because one of the things that's been happening in genre fiction for years now is that the bean counters don't understand mid-list authors. And so what happens is very often mid-list authors will get one book, two books, and then the bean counters tell the editor, don't pick up the third book. And then you have to go find someplace else to put your book. We've been that outlet for a while. We've had some serious success with it, including yourself, and also recently David Brin and Stephen Sterling. We just published a whole new YA series from David Brin. The first book came out this week. And on March 11th, we're publishing the first in a new trilogy by Stephen M. Sterling. Even an author like Sterling didn't get picked. His second trilogy didn't get picked up. He came to us and said, would you do this? We also look for authors, because it's Ring of Fire Press and because we have a strong tie to the 1632 universe. We also look for authors who can write or who have written in the 1632 series. They actually do extremely well. So we try to publish. We're now publishing 4 books a month, and we try to make sure that at least one of them is a 1632 title. So acquisitions is the first thing I do. The second thing I do is I read them, which is time consuming as all get out because I can't read any faster than I can read. I never knew why in all those years that I was sending off stuff to editors, why it took so long for them to get back to me. Now I know it's because they can't read any faster than they can read either. And they have lives, and they have families and kids, and many editors have day jobs. And so now I understand. And one of the things that I can tell your audience is do not be dismayed if you send an editor something and you don't hear back for a while. You will hear back eventually, especially if you send it to me. You will hear back from me. I've never let anybody go dark, and I've never ghosted on anybody. So that's the second thing I do, is to read the book. And if at the end of the second thing, if I like it, I do one of two things. I either send it back for revisions, or I send them a contract. When I get the revisions back, I read it again. And sometimes it goes, well, I just sent an author who has written many, many short stories, but never a novel before. I just sent him a contract yesterday after his 5th revision of his novel. And it's 165,000 word novel, and I had to read every single bit of it 5 times. So once I get it to the point where I think it's publishable, then the next thing I do after I send them a contract is I oversee the proofreading process. We kind of jumble the copy editing and proofreading processes together at Ring of Fire Press because we're small. I do the gross copy editing, and then the proofreaders do the fine copy editing and proofreading. So it's not uncommon for one of our authors to get a suggestion from a copy editor that's not exactly proofreading, which is fine. We have really good copy editors doing our proofreading, and we like that. Then once I get that back, we turn the book over to production, and they get a cover, and the book gets produced, and we sell it. We sell ebooks in every format you can think of on ringoffirepress.com. And we sell paper on Amazon. So you can get both ebooks and paper. One of the things that I truly like is the fact that we sell ebooks in just about every configuration you can think of. We learned that from Baen Books, who you can even buy an editable RTF of your favorite novel from Baen. I just had to, because I'm working on a novel with Eric Flint, and rather than have 2 computers set up so that I could read from one and retype from the other, I downloaded the editable RTF so that I can cut and paste some dialogue, because one of the scenes in the story I'm writing mirrors one of the scenes in that book. It's from a different point of view, so I needed to be able to do that. That was really useful, and thank Jim Baen for doing that, because sorry about that. My 4-legged office assistants.
It's cats. Sometimes it's dogs.
Well, in my case, it's dogs. I have 2 huge Weimaraners sitting here trying to figure out who I'm talking to, because it might be interesting. So that's what I do as an editor. What I'm looking for when I'm looking for a new writer, or when I'm looking at a new book, is I'm looking for something different, a twist, something that isn't exactly like the last 10 space operas. Something, if I could have published this that I'm wearing, the Liaden universe, I would have loved to do it. In fact, I am kind of pleased that I was the person who called up Tony Weiskopf and said, "Hey, the Liaden universe just lost their publisher. You ought to pick them up." And so she did, to the great benefit of all concerned, including the readers, because I think since Meisha Merlin died and Baen took the mark on, I think they've written 16 novels and a whole bunch of short stories. So everybody did good. Everybody happy. I can share with you a couple of the stories that I thought had a really cool twist. One of them is the trilogy that or is it a quadrilogy?
Well, I'm working on book 5, and it should be the last.
Okay. One that is one. Everybody and his brother and his sister and his maiden aunt and uncle have written alternate histories about the Civil War. It's one of the most abused that you can think of, including time traveling characters from South Africa bearing AK-47s. The only 2 people that I know who have done alternate histories of the Civil War that I found fascinating. One was Eric Flint with his Rivers of War series. He was asked to do a Civil War alternate history, and he said, well, okay, I'm going to start it in 1820. And he managed to get 2 books out before the great and wonderful large publisher that he was selling them to decided to change editors, and the editor lost any interest. So sometime later on this year, he should have book 3 finished finally, and that will go to Bain because he has rights to the whole thing back, and so he'll be publishing both of those. He based his change on the fact that Sam Houston was didn't get very badly injured in one of the battles in the Indian Wars, and so he became a major actor on the stage of American politics 10, 12 years sooner, and he goes on from there. Yours is even more interesting, in my opinion, because you said, okay, sure, here's the change point. McClellan becomes president, and the South wins the war. Sort of.
Sort of a draw.
And so when I read that, I was going, okay, especially because you set it in what is, for all intents and purposes, modern day. And so you had to create a backstory that went all the way back to 1864, which turned out to be really cool. And I'm waiting anxiously for the next one, because not only is the story interesting and the plot good, but your writing's quite good too. And when you get all of that together, you win. We need to work on selling more of your books, and I'm sure that doing this kind of video and podcasting and things like that will help.
I hope so. I know it sold 1.
Well, that's good. I keep buying them, but all I can do is send you royalties. But that's the kind of thing I'm looking for that's different. I'm publishing a space war, space opera right now that fell into that interesting column. It's by an interesting fellow by the name of Shane Grease, who is at the moment the United States military attaché to Australia. Colonel Grease has been hanging around for a long time, and we finally talked him into trying to write. He did a good job. He's just turned in his 2nd book. The story is this whole population of people in a star empire loses their war. and they flee across space looking for a planet that doesn't have any, according to their charts, it doesn't have any inhabitants. Of course, when they get there, they find out that the planet is very nicely inhabited, thank you very much, and has no desire to become the new home of this rather ragged empire. And interesting stuff ensues. So it's not a real space opera where the bad guys are over in those ships and the good guys are over in these ships, and millions and millions of dead bodies ensue. It's got that twist. Another one that we published not too long ago is really a twist. It's by a fellow named Neil Litherland, who is more well known as a comic book artist and a games writer. He has written a kind of a combination of Mike Hammer, Private Eye, and Watership Down. The main character is a tough street tomcat. And the bad guys are the rats. And it's all populated by animals. And it's extremely good. It's extremely funny. And he's just turned in his second book in the series, of which I've read the first line, and I liked it a lot. So we look at things like that. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. I don't want to publish stuff that other publishers can publish. And I do want to look for people who have never been published before. I do especially like to see submissions from people of color and other people who are downtrodden, essentially, because some of them have tremendous things to share, and I love publishing them. So as an editor, I get to do something that is really a lot of fun. I get to read books for a living. That's pretty much it. So one of the things that I encourage all of you viewers who think they might want to write something and haven't is make sure you're following the style guide that the publishing house that you want to send it to is requesting. Not all style guides are the same. We use the Chicago Manual of Style, the AP Style Guide, and a thing called Words into Type. And if you don't have any of them, go out and buy Words into Type, because it's the favorite of a lot of publishers. It was Jim Bain's favorite, and I learned to edit from Jim. And then the other thing that I do as an editor is completely different, because I wear two hats. I'm the editor-in-chief of Ring of Fire Press, which is a book publisher, but I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Grantville Gazette. The Grantville Gazette is a bi-monthly SIFWA-approved venue, meaning we pay 8 cents a word. And we've been publishing now, well, I'm working on issue 94. So we've been publishing it for a good long time. The Grantville Gazette is made up of two parts. The majority of it is fiction and nonfiction about the 1632 universe, centered in or about the 1632 universe. We also Jim Bain had uh, a real insistence on bringing up new writers. He would find new writers, people like Lois Bujold, Elizabeth Moon, people like that, and he would bring them along, help them, encourage them, edit them, and train them how to do it right. He also would have some of his writers write with his more established writers. Eric Flint wrote 6 books, the Belisarius series, with David Drake. And it taught Eric how to write, basically how to write selling fiction. And it also told him how to manage a series, which was great because 1632 wasn't intended to be a series. It was intended to be a standalone. And when it got published and it went to the bestseller charts immediately, Jim Bain said, "Oh, write another one just like that. But here, do it with Dave Weber." And so David Weber was brought in as a secondary author, and we've continued that. I just finished. Well, I guess I'm not quite finished with it. I'm on the last pages of a book called 1637, The Peacock Throne, which is by Eric Flint and a great new writer called Griffin Barber. It's out in ARC only at the moment. But Bain being forethoughtful, you can buy ARCs 6 months before the book comes out. Mm-hmm. And so I did. He does, and he's writing one with me, which is going to be called 1637, The African Queen, we think. It may be something else. Queen Nzinga of Angola was going to be a lead character, but she's kind of been pushed aside for the next book, mainly because in real history, the Portuguese beat her and chased her out of Angola into a neighboring kingdom. So the African Queen we were going to write about, we got to wait and do it later. This is going to be very interesting for Eric because he's ABD on a doctorate in African history and from UCLA, and he's excited to be able to actually use what he went to college for. How many writers get into that? But the Grantville Gazette, until this week, has been operated as a writer's training ground and crit group ever since Jim Bain loaned us the money to start it. It came out of the old Bain's Universe magazine, which was one of the first reasonably successful online magazines. And if we had been able to hold on for 4 more years until the Kindle came out, it'd still be running because it was we distributed it online as a download, and you could get a CD of it. Not exactly the way that it really needed to be to take off. So when that went down, we had this crit group that Jim and Eric had established for Bain's Universe. And we'd already pulled some remarkable people out of it, like Edward M. Lerner and other people like that. And so we said goodbye and all that. Thanks for all the fish. And the crit group wouldn't stop. They kept sending us stuff. And at that time, we were getting the Grantville Gazette off the ground. And so we merged crit groups, and the Gazette has two parts. The first part, I said, is for 1632. The other part is for standard science fiction and fantasy. I unfortunately only have room for one or two non-1632 pieces in an issue, which is sad because we are getting enough through the crit group we still call it the universe crit group. We're getting enough that I'm telling people, this is really good. I can buy it if you'll wait a year, because that's my next slot, or go try and sell it somewhere else. I hate doing that because I hate giving away really good stuff that people are going to want to read, but it's the only thing I can do. I'm hoping at some point that we'll get bigger and better. What I'm doing right now is trying to figure out how to reproduce the 5 conferences on Baines Bar that we used to produce the crit groups. We had a general conference for people who wanted to talk about the 1632 series. We had a slush conference where people posted slush in the 1632 universe. We had a slush conference where people posted non-1632 slush stories. And we had the commentary conferences so that other writers, it's a crit group, writers post it, people read it. You get a week to think about it, and then you can put out another one. Once in a while, the fairy godmother department strikes, and I send them a note after the first one that says, if you'll do these things, I'll buy it. Send me a manuscript. But we've filled 94 issues of the Gazette that way. So I hope that we can figure out another alternative. I couldn't care less about this kerfuffle other than that.
So if someone is looking for a publisher, you said you're not really an open house. So is there a way for them to contact you if they're not on the crit groups or someone you know?
Sure. All I have to do is send me an email and say, this is what I've got. Mm-hmm. If they know somebody, they want to say, Martha said I should send this to you. I don't want submissions. I don't even want story treatments from people. What I want is a query letter, and I'll deal with query letters. I read Slush for Bain Books for a couple of years, and it taught me never to open my mouth and volunteer near a publisher ever again, because it was horrible. Some of the things, there's a reason that people read really bad slush at cons when editors get on panels and they read really bad slush out. Because it's really bad. It's incredibly bad. You can tell in some cases, oh, well, this was plotted off of D&D book 6. Or this came from Steve Jackson Games, and they wrapped words around it, and there you go. Or this is just like book X, and they didn't even bother to do what Twilight did, which is to write fanfic and file the serial numbers off. If at least file the serial numbers off. But yeah, I will look. I just don't want my inbox overloaded with manuscripts.
Mhm.
Um, Bain is the only major publisher who still accepts unagented manuscripts, and they have a slush pile, and it takes about 3 months for your submission to get acknowledged, and a year to a year and a half for them to take it through first cut, and as long as 2 to 2.5 years before they decide whether they're going to buy it or not.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that, and that's exactly what I would have to do.
Mhm.
I also don't want to hire slush readers. Bain has a whole coterie of slush readers, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, people can send me a query letter. I got a query letter day before yesterday, and I said no. But that doesn't mean I'll always say no. Neil Litherland got real smart. Um, Joy Ward is my co-conspirator in crime and all of this stuff. And he got hold of her at a con and said, "This is what I'm doing. What do you think?" So she came to me and she said, "This guy Neil Litherland sounds really interesting." I said, "Okay." So she went back to Neil and said, "Send it to us." And then she read it and said, "You, between chortles, you got to read this," because it was very, very funny. The hard-boiled tomcat detective is just it's very, very funny and very good. So I will look at a query letter. Oh God, I know I'm opening up the door.
Yeah. Well, so how long have you been with Ring of Fire Press then?
I've been editor of Ring of Fire Press since we started,
Mhm.
which is about 4 years ago. And we've grown from a book every so often to publishing almost as many books as some of the majors do. And if the Bryn YA series takes off, we're going to have a serious YA section. We have 2 other authors who are writing YA that we are publishing. Gorg Huff and Paula Goodlett, and they have written something that's in a similar vein to I can't remember the name of the woman who wrote. Anyway, it's about magic in the Victorian English countryside, and this woman becomes a very powerful magician. And the stories are as she grows up, which is why she makes YA. So we're going to have. Looks like we're going to have a serious YA section. And the other thing that we are publishing, which is mainly because I can, I found out about a year ago that the woman that has taught me almost as much about writing as anybody, and who is commonly considered the greatest living historical novelist, had been dropped by her publisher, Cecilia Holland. And I called Cecilia up and said, "I'm very interested in publishing you. I'll publish your new one, and as much of your backlist as is not in print anymore, And if you'll write me new ones, I'll publish them too. And so we have now got a line of historical fiction. One of the authors that we're publishing in that line, this is not alternate history, this is straight historical fiction, is a guy named Stoney Compton, who is better known for his alternate history. He's written a trilogy of books that center around Juneau, Alaska in the 1918, 1920 range. So we're publishing that as well. I don't know that Eric is all that keen on publishing historical novels, but I said, look, damn it, I've been in love with this woman's fiction since I was 16 years old. Now we're going to publish her. And so we do. She's working on a new book right now about a young woman who decides that she's not all that happy with the roles that are traditionally given to women in the 1770s. So she puts on a pair of pants and a coat and picks up her father's musket and runs off to join the Revolutionary Army. I've read the first third of it, and it's really good. And she says that the character, who she calls Jack, just won't leave her alone. That's the best kind. So we do that as well. We've published fantasy. We've published alternate history. We publish alternate history that's not 1632. For example, we publish you. And we also now publish YA and historical fiction. So it's getting very interesting around Ring of Fire Press.
Okay, it sounds great. So remember, if you're watching this and you feel like contacting Walt, I'll put his email in the description. Only contact him with a query letter, so he can decide if he wants to hear from you again for this particular project. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit like and subscribe and share it around, and also hit that little bell notification so you know when I put up more videos. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.